Welcome to SOS Discussion. Today we're covering the AFC North Division, and I'm going to start with the Bengals, and everybody's going to give their opinion. My first question with the Bengals is, what do we think of Joe Burrow coming off the injury this year? We know he just got some help with his receivers, but he didn't really get any help in terms of his O-line. What do we see for him this year coming off injury? I'm going to start with Darren.
I don't think it's going to be a pretty season, at least at the beginning. On Tuesday in practice, he said it was the first time that he really felt comfortable on the leg. And he's been struggling all training camp. I know we haven't been in training camp that long, but he's been training camp just feeling comfortable. He hasn't felt right. And we look at Tom Brady. There was reports about how his mental state was not all the way there when he came back from his ACL injury. He suffered that early in the season. Burrow has had a great road to recovery. And honestly, I didn't expect him to be ready for week one this season. However, when I look at it and I listen to what he's saying, and they're saying he's not himself, his comfortability and he's not comfortable in the pocket, it's making me worried, especially with the offensive line concerns. But his poise in the pocket was one of his best attributes, and if he doesn't right now, I have to look at him to struggle at least to start the year until his mind is back with his.
Yeah, I honestly don't think Joe Burrow is 100% healthy. I mean, when you look at Saquon, they're talking about he's not going to be ready until week 3 or week 4. And so then I question why Joe Burrow, who tore every ligament in his knee, is going to be on track to play in week 1 when he got hurt towards mid-season last year. And I think the struggles in training camp and him saying he's not comfortable kind of give credence to that. I think when you look at the quarterback position, this is an investment you're hoping to make for 10 to 15 years. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals are treating him like he's a backup. First of all, I know he wanted his brother Jamar Chase from LSU, but you had to go out and try to upgrade that O-line as best as possible. And then now I feel like you're in a situation where you need to protect him from himself. I don't care how he feels. I don't think he'll be ready for week 1. And I don't know if the organization thinks that. I think the organization is kind of letting Joe Burrow dictate, when he's going to play and what he's going to do. And I think that's why you're seeing him struggle, because he's not 100% healthy. And then, like Darian made a great point about the mental aspect. If he's behind a shaky O-line and he's not 100% confident in his knee and the movements he needs to make, and he's going out there, not playing purely off instinct, but he's thinking about it, then I think it's going to be a long season for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's going to be a long season for Joe Burrow. And, one thing we don't want to see is him take a step back or have a sophomore slump. We want to see him continue to progress, especially with him already being compared to Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert looking like a star. And we've heard reports out of Miami that Tua looks way better than he did last year. So this is definitely not the campaign for Joe Burrow to go out there and look average or below average. And so I think the Cincinnati Bengals need to protect him from himself and make sure he's fully healthy before they put him on that field and risk either him, having mental damage by going out there and not playing well, or further physical damage to that knee and jeopardizing his career.
Yeah, I think the main thing here that we all probably agree on is confidence. And I think they are in for a rocky season, because an injury like this is not something that's easy to come back from. He's got to have confidence in his knee. He's got to have confidence in himself. And he's got to have confidence in that offensive line that they pretty much failed to address. I think they drafted one offensive tackle this season in this draft, and they may have picked up one or two in the offseason, if that, but they pretty much honed in on the defensive side of the ball. And that's okay if you're not dealing with an injury like Joe Burrow just took. And so I think you have to do better at protecting your quarterback. I know I, for one, thought they were going to go O-line first in the draft, and they chose to go with Jamar Chase. And so they picked up some other receivers as well, and it seems like they just keep neglecting that offensive line, and that can't be an easy thing for him to mentally overcome. So I'm interested in seeing how he bounces back from this, but I don't think it's going to be pretty, starting out at least.
Confidence definitely is going to be key for Joe Burrow coming into this year. It's going to be hard to do that if he doesn't get any protection, but he does have the receivers. But speaking of O-line, the Pittsburgh Steelers is what we're going to talk about next. What do we think is the most important asset for the Steelers in terms of success this year? I'm going to start with Darren.
Well, I think you gave a little spoiler for it, at least on my things. I'm going to go with the offensive line. I think that when you're looking at the 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers, they weren't that good towards the end of the year. Couldn't run the ball all year, and they quick passes. Part of the fact that Bernard just was not all the way healthy. But another part was the offensive line could not protect long enough for them to have longer developing routes. So, and we also know that the line was struggling to block for James Conner. They got Najee Harris, but if the line is not better, then the running game will not be much better. So because they were the key contributor, in my opinion, to the struggles late last season offensively, I'm going to say that they need to be the biggest contributor this year to the offensive strides for 2020.
I think the most important aspect of the Pittsburgh Steelers season would be the running game. And, that coincides with the offensive line. I think Big Ben, this team will only go as far as Big Ben takes them. But the running game is just important to have that balance. And I think the best friend for a quarterback, old or young, is a good running game. And last year, the Steelers had, if not the worst, one of the worst rushing attacks in the league. And we saw how defenses were playing. The defenses were just playing them for that short pass, and they didn't even play the run. And that gave the defense an advantage, right? And you can talk about, the Steelers went 11-0, and then they finished, I think, 1-4, and just really didn't look impressive in any of those last 5 games. And so I think they need the running game. The season is longer now. You have Big Ben, one of the older quarterbacks in the league, and they drafted Najee Harris in the first round for a reason. I think they really need to lean on Najee. Still have that short passing offense. They still have, great receivers in Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, Eric Ebron. They have a lot of weapons. Obviously, Big Ben, is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But I think the key this year is what they didn't have last year is going to be that balance with Najee Harris. I think the offensive line, they'll play well just because on offense, they won't have to pass protect for too long. Big Ben's going to get that ball out. And I think we've seen Najee Harris at Alabama. He's definitely a grinder. The type of running back that can turn 2 yards into 4 yards, 4 yards into 6 yards, et cetera, nothing in the two. So I think the running game is going to be important because it's going to take pressure off of Big Ben in what's likely his final season. And I think it's going to allow him to be more fresh and be more effective and then be more balanced. And defenses have to play them honest. And I think we'll see a revitalized Steelers team because I think Najee Harris is going to give them a lot of juice that they didn't have last year with James Conner.
Oh, yeah, very good points by both of y'all. I feel like at this stage of Ben's career, the O-line and Ben kind of go hand in hand. But at the end of the day, the Pittsburgh Steelers are not the same without Big Ben on the field. If Mason Rudolph has to come in and take over good offensive line or not, I'm not sure that he can get the job done in that regard. And so, yeah, they are going to have to rely on Najee heavily. And I think it's good to have a great running game. Every team needs that. But when it comes to passing and you having the great receivers that they do have over there, I think Ben is going to need to stay healthy. And Ben is going to have to be the one to get that offense going and keep it rolling throughout the season. And so keeping him healthy and keeping him, ready to go is very important. But if Mason has to come in, I don't think Pittsburgh has the season they had last season.
Well, speaking of O-lines for the first two teams, we have another good O-line, not another, but the first good O-line in this division, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have a great O-line, but the real question this year is this a make or break year for Baker Mayfield? What do you think, Darian?
Before I get into the Browns, I just want to point out the best part of that segment was listing almost every single receiving option on the Pittsburgh Steelers, aside from Juju Smith-Schuster. That was easily one of the best parts of that segment. But we talk about a make or break year for Baker Mayfield. I'm not sure. I think that this is a make year. I don't know how much opportunity he'll have to break, though. I think that this is the year where he can really set him on a level where at least I and some others that I've talked to do not think he's at right now. Right now, I think a lot of people look at him as a game manager in a sense, or at least a better version. Some people have called him a better version of Ryan Tannehill. I've heard some people say it. I don't know if I'd say that. But this year, he could take a step up, and he has to show that he's able to make those big-time throws and really be able to be a leader of the offense. It's going to be hard because with Kevin Stefanski, the offense is always going to run through the running game. But in opportunities where Baker step up and be the man, I think that he has to do it this year. Otherwise, he'll be looked at as like Ryan Tannehill, where, yeah, he's a good quarterback, but we know that nothing going without that guy behind him. So I know Baker doesn't want to be that. He wants to get that $40-some-odd million that the quarterback market is at right now. You don't show you one of them guys, you ain't getting one of those guys type money.
Yeah. I think this is a make or break year for Baker Mayfield. I mean, technically it's not because he would be able to play on the fifth-year option next year and he would be able to prove everything we're saying right now if he doesn't prove it this year. But I think when you look at the season the Cleveland Browns had last year, they started off kind of looking like those same old Cleveland Browns, right? And then they found themselves throughout the middle of the season. They went on a run towards the end. They beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and they looked like they could beat the Kansas City Chiefs, especially with Patrick Mahomes going out. You know, it was a couple plays in that game. I think Rashard Higgins tried to reach out and score a touchdown, ended up fumbling and getting a touchback. You know, and that was a huge play. But there was a lot of plays in that game where the Browns easily could have won it and made it to the AFC Championship game. And I think that's why this is a huge year for Baker Mayfield, because I think when a lot of people look at the Cleveland Browns, they attribute their success to the running game or them having the best O-line in football. And they look like they kind of look at it as Baker Mayfield is being brought along for the ride. So if they don't have the same type of season, because a lot of people have high expectations for this Cleveland Browns team, we all think that they may not be the favorites to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC, but I definitely think they're Super Bowl contenders, along with the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. So if the Browns take a step back this year, right? I think they won, I don't know if they won, 10 to 12 games last year, whatever it was. If they take a step back this year and they don't even make the playoffs, or they kind of look like the Browns of old, or they go, I guess with 17 games, they go 7-10 or something like that, I think the majority of the blame will go to Baker Mayfield. And then we'll be looking at Baker Mayfield, right? Is he a Patrick Mahomes? Is he a Dak Prescott? Is he a Lamar Jackson? Is he a Josh Allen? Is he worth paying $40 million? Is he even worth paying 30 to 35 million? Or is he a game manager? Is he a replaceable? I think those are all kind of questions we had before last year, and then the Browns surprised us. But I think if he doesn't duplicate what he did last year or have the same type of success, it's not even really about his stats, because Baker Mayfield is going to get paid off the team's success. If the team continues to ball, he's going to be the perfect quarterback for them, because they don't need a quarterback that's going to go out there and beat you every week. They need a quarterback that's not going to lose the game every week. And I think that's what Baker Mayfield has done thus far. So if you have that same team around him, they have arguably one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, and Baker Mayfield can't lead you to the playoffs after last year, or Baker Mayfield leads you to a losing record, then I think you need to seriously consider if Baker Mayfield is the future or just a kind of cool quarterback, that would be nice to have.
So yeah, good points. I don't think that this is a make or break for Baker. I'm kind of confident that Baker can build off the season that he had last season. Just looking at the improvement he made, the big leap he made from 2019 to 2020. Now, anything is possible. But just going off the stats, I think Baker has the right pieces around him for the Browns to continue to go in the right direction. And so, yeah, he does just pretty much need to be a game manager. They have a really great running game over there. And so he doesn't necessarily have to sit back and throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game. He can rely on that run game, get Odell and Jarvis Landry the ball when needed, and just manage the game. Don't go out and lose the game. And I think he'll be fine. I think they'll find themselves back in a position of winning another, going to the playoffs, if not winning a playoff game. And I think it's up for the Browns from here.
And I just want to say really quickly, the Cleveland Browns last year were better the less passes that Baker Mayfield threw. And so a lot of people know that, but don't think the organization doesn't know that as well.
This situation really reminds me of Dak Prescott before he kind of broke out into this top 10 quarterback, where it was Zeke Elliott's going to run the ball. He has a great O-line. It was way more focused on the running game, and Dak's a game manager. And now Dak's getting paid like a top quarterback. So we'll definitely have to see what happens with Baker Mayfield. But the next question is to another quarterback in the division. He's won an MVP. He's proved himself. But does he deserve the same amount of money as Josh Allen just received? What do you think, Darren?
Yeah, I think he does. When I look at the top 5 to, depending on your position, 5 to 10 guys at a particular position, somewhere in that range, a lot of times get number 1 money. So a lot of times we look, that guy's not the number 1 guy at his position. He's not this, that, and the third. However, a lot of times, most times you don't have to be. It's just about who's going to be next up. So if you ask me, Lamar falls in that 5 to 10 range. I think that he is extremely number 1 guy to that success in Baltimore. And yeah, I think that he deserves to get his money, man. He's a former MVP. And as long as he continues to stay kind of steady, of course, we want to see him improve. But if he just stays steady and doesn't take a dip, I expect the same amount of money as Josh Allen, because it's going to be his turn.
Yeah, I definitely think he deserves the same amount of money as Josh Allen. I think the only question in that would be if you think that Josh Allen has advanced himself as a passer and that Lamar Jackson hasn't, or maybe far away from that. But if we look at Josh Allen, he's only had, and I love him as a quarterback, but he's only had 1 season of over 60% completion percentage in his life, not just in the NFL, in his life, right? Like even in high school, he was throwing over 60% completion percentage. So Josh Allen is not guaranteed either to give you bang for your buck on that $250 million. When you look at Lamar Jackson, regardless of how you feel about him, like you said, he's won an MVP. He's a system amongst himself, right? And he's won over 70% of his games. He's literally a system amongst himself. A quarterback with multiple 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He's led the league in passing touchdowns before. So the narratives about him not being a great passer, him not being able to pass, they're just overblown. And frankly, there's really not a lot of merit to him. I think that they can be a little more versatile on offense. I think they can be more creative on offense. I think sometimes they rely too much on Lamar Jackson's legs in the running game instead of really allowing him to pass the way some of these other quarterbacks do. And so they kind of, the team is limiting Lamar Jackson by not taking the training wheels off of him. But he's proved enough in this league. Like I said, he's a winner. He's an MVP. He's an offensive system upon himself. And as long as he's in Baltimore, they're going to win 10 games every year. He's proven that. Even when they took Joe Flacco out and that team made a run to the playoffs, he's done nothing but win since he's been there. He deserves all the money Baltimore's willing to give him.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think he's worth it. And I hate to try to compare these two because it's hard because the rosters are so different. And I don't like to use the roster as being an excuse as to why people want to blame Lamar for the Ravens' shortcomings. But at the end of the day, it's true. If you were to give Lamar some help around there, the likes of how Josh Allen has a supporting cast, then I think we'll see more of the dual threat that Lamar Jackson is. We've seen the Ravens build a championship roster before, and it seems like they've honed in on defense, built that defense up to be a top 2 defense, but they've neglected the offensive side of the ball. And so you give Lamar the supporting cast, and I'm sure he's going to have another over 1,000-yard rushing season and over 3,000-yard passing season. He just needs the right pieces to work with.
Yeah. And, we're just so used to the instant, we see the Patrick Mahomes come right in and we get enamored with the instant success, right? We don't care about the grind, the hustle, the struggle, just what it takes. I mean, obviously he hasn't struggled, but I mean, we're talking about a quarterback that's 24, 25 years old and has already won an MVP. He has so much room to grow. So acting like he hasn't already earned $250 million or he doesn't have the potential to earn $250 million, it's crazy. We haven't even seen Lamar's ceiling. He's a great player in this league. And like I said, he deserves whatever Baltimore is willing to give him.
I definitely agree. I think I'm the biggest Lamar Jackson fan in this room, but I think one point to say, even though this is kind of not really for Lamar, but I think one of the perspectives when it comes to Lamar Jackson and money, look at the other quarterbacks, it's like, I know this guy's going to be my quarterback for the next 10 years. Like, you look at Patrick Mahomes, like the next decade, this is my guy. When you're so dependent on running, not saying that he can't pass the ball, there's just more possibilities that you get injured. It's just how football works. I think that's one of the reasons there's question marks with Lamar Jackson. It's, yes, he deserves the money. Yes, he's the face of our team. Yes, he can ball. Yes, he won an MVP. But is he going to be our quarterback for the next 10 years? Is he going to be able to run like that every single time? So I think those are some of the questions that come up, at least in my head, when I'm thinking, would I pay Lamar Jackson, similar deals to some of the other guys? I think he's earned it. It's so hard to get a quarterback in this league, and he's an MVP. You give him the money. But those are just some questions to think about. But y'all tell us what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to like it up and subscribe. We'll see y'all next time. SOS Discussion.